It just makes me want to cry again because I don't know what to do.
A family's home left in shambles. Now detectives in Wayne County, fire investigators, and the FBI are trying to figure out who's behind an explosion that is also being treated as a hate crime.
This is just terrible. Early this morning, an arsonist blew up the home of an interracial couple, and racial slurs were spray painted on their property. Bob Jones live in the village of Sterling right now. And Bob, there is a large reward in this disturbing crime.
In the early morning hours of August 17th, 2019, at approximately 12:40 in the morning, a local Wayne County community was quite literally rocked by an explosion that occurred in the home of Angela Frazee, a woman who had had that home in that neighborhood for 23 years. Now, of course, they were also metaphorically rocked when they discovered that there was graffiti spray painted all over the property in this heinous attack, and that graffiti indicated that there was a racist motivation behind this. Now, Angela Frazee happens to be a black woman. She is married to somebody of a different race, so there were a bunch of slurs associated with that, both painted on her property, vehicles, and an adjoining property, and this led a lot of people to believe that we had a 1950 style Birmingham bombing style hate crime, an act of evil white racism, and of course this triggered a multi-agency investigation. But you guys all understand that if I'm covering a hate crime 6 years later on this channel, that the resolution was not what was originally thought, because it turns out Angela Frazee herself is in fact the person behind this. And that's what we're going to talk about today. A hate hoax so extreme and so dangerous, it involved an explosion in somebody's house, and it turns out it was just an insurance scam, and of course a play to gin up hysteria related to evil white racism. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
Well, investigators were out here most of the day today, beginning to sift through all of this rubble left behind from the explosion. They are looking for any possible answers. The heartbroken couple who lived here also trying to figure out who did this. Tonight, as you can see, a $5,000 reward is posted for information leading to the unknown arsonist, who could also be looking at a federal hate crime.
It's sickening to do this to somebody's home and not even know if they're home or not.
So I just want to point out for everybody out there in the audience that may be listening via podcasting form that they're not showing us a little bit of damage to the home. They're showing us absolute devastation. A bomb quite literally went off there and the home is completely obliterated. And the voice that you're hearing is Angela Frazee the day of, when she's talking about how sick and disgusting this is. And obviously she is explaining how devastated she was at the time that she lost her home of 23 years. Now, of course, we would find out not 5 to 6 years later that she was in fact the person behind this, and that line about not even being aware of whether or not these people are home or not really rings hollow when you realize that she planted the bomb herself. But again, look at the extreme damage that this bomb did to this home and realize that we're dealing with an amateur right here, and this could have easily gotten out of control and affected the neighbors. It could have killed somebody who just happened to be walking by or anything of the sort, and obviously this woman didn't care about any of that because this is just an elaborate insurance scheme. Again, the likelihood of somebody doing a Birmingham style bombing on an interracial couple in the middle of Ohio that they specifically targeted because they know it's an interracial couple in the house, and then actually spraying painting their motive while they're doing it seems rather absurd. It seems like a crazy chance to take. And again, this is an attack that we have not seen in the United States of America in decades.
You know, we could have been in there.
Angela Frazee is heartbroken and frightened, not knowing where to go or what to think after an arsonist blew up her home around 12:45 this morning. The place she's called home for 23 years with her husband, Brad, reduced to pieces. Most of their belongings destroyed.
I got sick twice. That's what happened. It was like, this didn't just happen. I don't understand it.
The back of it is on fire and it's just melting off.
A neighbor captured video of flames shooting out of the house on the normally peaceful Spruce Street in the village of Sterling.
So we get a quick look at her husband right there. We might talk about him a little bit later on, but as you can see, this woman is very good at feigning victim status. The local news media calls her an arson victim, even though this is described as an explosion. However, already in the beginning of this particular video, there were a number of red flags associated with this case that should have triggered a bit of skepticism. But of course, it's 2019. Evil orange man's in office, or evil white racism is on the tips of everybody's tongue. It's about to explode in this country just a year later. Maybe she should have waited a little bit before staging this, but all of this concocted scheme is portrayed basically uncritically by the local news media, and everybody's buying into it because it seems rather crazy that neighbors who would be here for 23 years would destroy the home that they lived in and basically built up around them after all that time.
And when the fire was out, another startling discovery. Detectives believe the arsonist also spray painted the interracial couple's garage with racial slurs, which News 5 has blurred.
We're still doing this, this hatred stuff. Like, come on. Can't everybody get along?
So I just want to say I do appreciate the Rodney King reference. Can't we just get along? Really like that right there. But of course, this woman's like, we're still doing this. We're still doing the hatred thing. We're still doing the racism thing. And the answer, which is often the case, is no, absolutely not. Except when we're talking about you, because you decided to go in this direction. You decided to do this. And guess what? You manufactured the racism because in reality, the supply never meets the demand. You needed evil white racists that were so angry about you being married to your husband that they would blow up your home in order to get you that insurance money. But guess what? Those people don't actually exist. That is not a thing that happens in this country anymore. It was rare back in the day, but the woman decided to manufacture it and again, go on the local news in order to pitch her case, in order to maximize the revenue that she was going to get off of losing her home.
Next door, Crystal Pasterchek also on edge because her cars and garage also spray painted.
It's scary. I really don't, I have no idea what to say at this point. Like, there's so many emotions and anxiety. It's just mainly anxiety.
So we get the interview from the neighbor at the time, and obviously she is shocked and horrified. Obviously she is extremely concerned about what is going on in her neighborhood, because again, an explosion in your area is absolutely disastrous. But the next line from the local news media is where all of the red flags should have been thrown. It's where we all should have been a bit suspicious, because it turns out that these people weren't exactly living in this home, and the reason why is they recently experienced a small electrical fire.
Angela and Brad have been staying at a hotel since July after a small accidental electrical fire. The Sterling Fire Department returned to the home yesterday afternoon after they say someone broke in, turned on the gas stove's burners, but it didn't blow up because the electricity and gas had been disconnected. It's not clear what sparked this morning's explosion, the case now being handled as a hate crime with the FBI involved.
Now look, an electrical fire in your home on its own is not necessarily a red flag. That electrical fire may be perking up again at some point in time and setting a bigger blaze, also not necessarily a red flag. But an electrical fire in July that causes you to leave your particular home and stay in a hotel, has your power cut off and your gas cut off, obviously right there, that's a bit of a red flag, especially when the arson investigators are under the impression that the person who came to blow up this home initially tried to run the gas from the stove and have that ignite, but then also somehow had an additional incendiary device that they used to cause this particular blaze. So again, it seems rather odd that they would have two different methods in order to blow up this home. I guess they were just that evil, white, and racist. However, nobody in the local news media or anybody on the scene appears to be any the wiser to the idea that that doesn't make sense. And as a general rule on this channel, one of the things that I want you guys to keep in your head is that if something doesn't make sense, it's usually because it's a lie, and this is a perfect example of this. Who is that racist? Who is that angry that they're willing to target this particular home a full month after these people already moved out of their home due to electrical fire issues, that they would not only plot to blow up the property, but they would also have a backup method once the gas is turned off in the property, likely due to lack of payment because, insurance scams tend to follow financial troubles, and then they would just be able to pull it off anyway. That's a lot of dedication by these criminals specifically to target these individuals.
We are not going to tolerate that type of activity and behavior here.
Angela says she hasn't had any problems in the neighborhood and has no idea who did this or why. She's too scared to rebuild here.
I hope for the best. Put it in God's hand. Because that's all I can do now. Because home's gone.
Now, that was the state of the story at the time in 2019, and 2020 rolls around, 2021, 2022, 2023, up until late 2024, this was the status quo on this particular issue. It was an evil white racist hate crime that occurred, and obviously that story ended up spreading across the country, across this area. Word of mouth got out about the evil white racists that are just hanging around in this small Ohio town, because that's the impact of these crimes. That's the lie getting around the world faster than the truth can catch up. But eventually the truth did in fact catch up. And the reporting that we have as of February of this year is that Angela Frazee was actually convicted and will serve 2 years in prison for staging this hate crime hoax.
In small-town Sterling, just about an hour south of Cleveland, at the dead end of Spruce Street, surrounded by a cornfield, you'll find a faded swastika painted on a garage right next to a now-empty lot. In 2019, this was the scene of a massive home explosion. It's where Angela Frazee told our team she just lost everything. But now in a 7-page federal court filing, investigators believe it was all a scheme. Documents show Frazee reported 2 fires a month before the home exploded, and firefighters couldn't figure out how those fires started. The insurance company set Frazee and her husband up in a hotel. And about a month later, the fire department was back at the home again. They found the stovetop burner on, letting out gas. Documents show that Frazee reported a natural gas leak, and just a few hours later that night, the home exploded. Investigators later determined that Frazee was at the home for hours just before the late-night August 7th explosion. She told investigators she was at the hotel that night. The fire marshal then found hate speech written on the garage along with a spray-painted swastika.
So like I said, all the information that we needed to ascertain that this story was a little bit suspicious was available to us in the original local news segment, completely unwittingly reported by that agency as they pushed the hate crime hoax narrative that made the national news. Because what we find out is that there were multiple electrical fires reported by this woman, and she ended up staying at a hotel that was paid for by the insurance as they investigated it. In addition to that, we also discovered that this woman who claimed that she was at the hotel the whole time, who claimed that this was an evil white racist hate crime hoax that was perpetuated by the evil white racists, actually reported a gas leak on this property the very same day. Of course, that ultimately ended up leading to an explosion by an evil white racist blowing up the house due to the fact that they were in a interracial couple, and those two coincidences on the same day obviously don't jive. In addition to that, she claimed she was at the hotel all day, but investigators were able to determine that she was in fact on the property for hours leading up to the explosion, obviously spray painting all these evil white racist symbols, and of course thinking of multiple different methods in order to blow up the property. So what actually happened in this particular case is she showed up to the area, she tried initiating the gas leak on this particular property so that there could be an explosion. In reality, they had already cut off her gas for safety reasons, so even though she already reported the leak because her plan was to blow up the property, she kind of just came up with this scheme on the fly to blame evil white racists, and ultimately this ended up leading to her undoing.
Frazee then reported a series of hate crimes following the fire. Documents show she found the word white power on the garage. She then reported she found a stuffed doll in her mailbox painted black with a rope or noose tied around the neck. The document shows she then found an envelope with die written on it, and about 7 months later, the couple settled with the insurance company. And those documents show everything was part of a scheme to defraud the insurance company. Fraser and her husband got away with more than $250,000. Eventually, she was caught and charged with 4 felony counts of mail fraud. And Lena, community members also donated thousands of dollars of their own money to help support them.
Everything about that section of the local news segment is amazing. It's hilarious. It's absolutely insane that this woman thought that this would work. And of course, it is proof positive of something that I've told you repeatedly on this channel. And a lot of you have a little bit of skepticism about when I'm breaking down a case and I tell you that a criminal did something and you think in your head that that's completely illogical. No person who is thinking would ever do that. But guess what? Criminals are incredibly stupid. This woman had, for all intents and purposes at this moment in time, gotten away with it. She did the racism thing, got the sympathy from the neighbors, but she kept pushing the issue, kept saying that all these different things kept happening to her, that there was more graffiti added to the property, which of course begs the question, why would the evil white racist who successfully blew up her home be this obsessed with her? Why would they return to the scene, write white power on her garage? Why would they leave her an animal that was dyed black with a noose over it? And we all know that whenever a noose comes up in one of these hate crime stories, that's the biggest red flag. And why would they leave her an envelope that says die on it? Obviously, what was going on here is that this woman was trying to maximize her victimization, much in the same way that she was trying to maximize her insurance settlements based on the previous fires that she was setting at her property. And again, if she would have just left this as a regular ordinary fire, if she would have just not tried to maximize this, the fact is she might have been able to get away with this insurance fraud. She ended up settling with the company for $327,000, and now as a part of her plea agreement, she's going to have to pay all that money back in restitution, and she's completely out of home, and the property has never recovered. So
a Wayne County woman will spend the next 2 years in prison after admitting to setting her own home on fire and filing fake insurance claims. 60-year-old Angela Fraze pleaded guilty to 4 counts of mail fraud and was ordered to pay more than $327,000 in restitution. Officials say Fraze also staged multiple fake hate crimes, including spray painting racial slurs in her garage and placing a doll with a noose in her mailbox.
Angela Frazee, you're disgusting. You're an absolute idiot. You definitely deserve this sentence. And I guess I'll follow this story if there's any updates on the husband's potential involvement in this. But it appears as of right now that I don't have additional information on whether or not he's facing charges or he's likely to serve prison time for this. But I just want you guys to see that there is no hoax too great that these people will not perpetuate. But of course, those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias. You can support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about an explosive hate crime hoax. Till next time.